And the Falcons are making some insane moves, Matt.
Yes, they are.
Matthew Judon was traded for by the Falcons, giving up a third-round pick. And we'll see if he ends up signing a new deal with them or not. I would think that would have to be the case because otherwise you're renting a player for a year. And the Falcons did clear out some cap room today by restructuring the contract of Chris Lindstrom, their guard. So it looks like that move is coming. The thing with Matthew Judon is he suffered a lower bicep injury after the fourth game of the season last year and did have a couple sacks. I want to say he had 3 or 4 sacks in the first start of the season. He's 31. He'll be 32 later this year. And at some point in time, pass rushers fall off. The Bucs saw that firsthand with a couple of guys that they had. They traded for Jason Pierre-Paul in 2018. And eventually Jason Pierre-Paul started to slide and the Bucs let him go. And same thing with Shaq Barrett, right? They brought him on board in 2019 as a unheralded free agent. And all of a sudden he blew up and had 19 and a half sacks. And had a couple of good years. The Buccaneers probably, in hindsight, should have kept franchising him because they had to cut him and take a dead cap hit. He's just not the player that he once was. They ended up cutting him, signed with the Dolphins, and then since has retired. So, and he's what, 31 years old?
Yes.
So at some point,
I think he'll be 32
in time,
soon.
Yeah. In your early 30s, pass rushers fall off, and Judon is not a speed guy by any means. He's a power guy. So. We'll see if this move is something that really hurts the Buccaneers. I will say that Tampa Bay does have some really good offensive tackles, right?
Yeah, and thank you to Bucs Basement for the $1.99 super chat talking about Matthew Judon. And that was kind of the first thing I thought of. Well, first, you're like, shoot, a team in the NFC South that isn't the Buccaneers is, getting a pretty good pass rusher when he's fully healthy and playing his best. But then my next thought was, well, that's why the Bucs just paid Tristan Wirfs a lot of money on a contract extension, and that's why they moved Luke Gedeke out to right tackle, and we all saw what he did last season. Obviously, when you get a player like Judon, you immediately think, okay, he's probably going to match up against Luke Gedeke. I think this is a better matchup for Gedeke for everything that you just mentioned, Scott. That Gedeke, he was known as the glass eater coming out of Central Michigan. He's better against physical, hard-nosed guys because that's what he is as an offensive lineman. Gedeke, I think, tends to struggle a little bit more with the speed rushers, which isn't the case with Matthew Judon, especially that he's getting older in age. So, yes, it's something you obviously have to pay attention to, maybe be a little bit concerned about because edge rusher was kind of the big thing on the Falcons defense that they haven't figured out just yet. And you can kind of give the nod to the Buccaneers in that aspect of the game. So they clearly shored that up. But I also want to say, because obviously they just made a big signing right before the show as well, signing safety Justin Simmons to a 1-year, $8 million deal. He played for the Broncos for quite a while. So the Falcons are gearing up. They understand that this is their window right now, and they're trying to do everything that they possibly can. All I will say, though, is just because a team wins the offseason with big, splashy free agent signings, I know the one with Simmons came today, doesn't automatically give them the keys to drive the car of being the winner of the division. It doesn't make them the champions of the division. You can look at a lot of teams. Look at the Saints last year with all the signings with Derek Carr, and they didn't work out. Look at, if you want to go back to Baker Mayfield in his days with the Cleveland Browns, when they got Odell Beckham Jr. and you had Jarvis Landry, it was like, wow, who's going to stop the Browns? And that never truly worked out. So let's not say the season is over just yet, that the Bucs have no chance to win the division, all because of a couple of signings that Atlanta made.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, Matt, I'm going to say that have the Falcons gotten better? Yeah, I think they've gotten better. But I also think the Buccaneers have gotten better this offseason, mainly through the draft and mainly because you have another year of Baker Evans. Let's just call it Baker Evans.
Hey, they really were like that. They were one symbiotic today.
Exactly. Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans both returning, right? So, that makes the Buccaneers better because they're in year 2 of their chemistry.
Exactly.
So if we saw what happened last year in year 1, it's only going to get better this year for those two players because they've got that chemistry, that rapport together. And then you add in pieces like Chase McLaughlin, Levante David back, Antoine Winfield Jr., Tristan Wirfs. So I think the Buccaneers have gotten better by staying together. And then also a situation where you've got, the draft class coming in. So I think to me that speaks volumes about what Tampa Bay has been able to do. They're not going to have to necessarily get better by adding free agents.
Yeah.
They're going to get better by adding younger players and then keeping this talented nucleus together.
Great teams build through the draft.
Yes.
And then they try to re-sign as many of those guys as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr. Hey, Mike Evans built through the draft. They
Right.
got him through the draft. Obviously, it was a very long time ago, over a decade ago, but still good enough. And thank you to Jonas Correa for this $1.99 super chat, who says, Atlanta going all in, actually all in, not cowboy all in.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck the Cowboys are doing. I mean, you got Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and
Yeah.
Dak Prescott. I understand it's a very difficult decision to make, but
Sure.
they're not even paying any of them, which
I know.
makes no sense to me.
Exactly. He's 0813, one of our Pewter Report TV channel members,
Yes.
with a great comment. Never forget the 2011 Eagles Dream Team. So it's hard to buy Super Bowl teams. It's hard to have teams that you purchase and you buy all these free agents. It happens sometimes when you've got teams like the 2002 Buccaneers, where John Gruden and Rich McKay did import a lot of new talent on the offensive side of the ball, but they had such a core nucleus of Mike Allstott, Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, Brian Kelly, Dexter Jackson. You had so many players that they just needed to add a couple of other pieces to. And in Atlanta, they do have a pretty good nucleus, especially at the skill positions, right? You got Drake London, who's a talented receiver. Kyle Pitts, I think, is still maybe not at the level most thought he would be at, but he's talented. Maybe that this new regime can get them more out of him. And the two running backs, I think, what a 1-2 punch in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. So, and along the offensive line, Chris Lindstrom's a heck of a piece. One of the best guards in the league.
These new signings for the Falcons, I think, has elevated them to a point where if they don't make the postseason, like maybe they don't win the division and the Bucs do, or something crazy happens. If they don't make the postseason at all, that is a huge disappointment for the Atlanta Falcons. So they're going all in. You know what? Good for them. Sometimes you got to do that. I also do want to say, because I think some people may end up making a comparison to the 2020 Bucs team, like how all you did was buy players. Not necessarily. The Bucs had an attractive team from a skill set standpoint from the Buccaneers,
and an offensive line standpoint.
Yes, and an offensive line standpoint. And that brought Tom Brady in.
Right.
You obviously all had skill players, but then Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, they were all extra complements to an already good team. Did they help elevate the team? Absolutely. Who knows where the Bucs would have been without Leonard Fournette in the postseason? I've had Leonard Fournette on the mind because we're in Jacksonville, and obviously Leonard played a lot for the Jacksonville and then was on the Buccaneers. But it's a little bit different if anyone was thinking about making that comparison.
Exactly.